The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot is a nonfiction book that tells the story of Henrietta Lacks, an African-American woman whose cancer cells were taken without her consent and used for scientific research. The book is part biography, part medical history, and part investigation into the ethical issues surrounding the use of human tissue for scientific research. The book begins with a description of Henrietta Lacks, a poor African-American woman from Virginia who was diagnosed with cervical cancer in 1951. Her cancer cells were taken without her knowledge or consent during a routine medical procedure and sent to a lab at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore for research. Henrietta died soon after, but her cells, which were able to reproduce themselves indefinitely, became known as HeLa cells and were used in countless scientific experiments and medical breakthroughs, including the development of the polio vaccine and in vitro fertilization. If you'd like to listen to this book on Audible for free, you can click the link in the description below. If you'd rather read this book, I've added a link to Amazon. Please feel free to leave a comment suggesting another book you'd like me to summarize. Now back to the summary. Skloot weaves together the story of Henrietta Lacks and her family with the history of medical research and the ethical debates that have arisen around the use of human tissue for scientific purposes. She discusses the exploitation of African Americans in medical research and the Tuskegee syphilis study, in which African American men were deliberately left untreated for syphilis in order to study the progression of the disease. Skloot also delves into the science behind HeLa cells, exploring how they were used to develop treatments for cancer and other diseases. She examines the controversy surrounding the ownership of HeLa cells, which have been commercialized and used for profit without the knowledge or consent of Henrietta Lacks or her family. Through her extensive research and interviews with Henrietta's family, Skloot paints a vivid picture of the woman behind the cells and the impact that their use has had on her family. She describes the struggles of Henrietta's children, who grew up in poverty and were denied access to health care, and the emotional toll that the discovery of their mother's cells has had on them. One of the most powerful aspects of the book is Skloot's portrayal of Henrietta's daughter, Deborah. Deborah's desire to learn more about her mother and her cells drives much of the narrative. Skloot forms a close relationship with Deborah and helps her navigate the complicated world of medical research and scientific terminology. Through Deborah's eyes, we see the impact that the use of Henrietta's cells has had on her family and the wider African American community. The book also raises important questions about the ethics of using human tissue for scientific research. Skloot examines the history of medical experimentation on African Americans and the ways in which their bodies have been used without their knowledge or consent. She discusses the need for informed consent and the importance of respecting the rights of patients and their families when it comes to the use of their tissue. Overall, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks is a powerful and thought-provoking book that sheds light on an important but often overlooked aspect of medical research. Skloot's meticulous research and engaging writing make this a compelling read for anyone interested in the intersection of science, history, and ethics. Through the story of Henrietta Lacks and her family, Skloot challenges us to consider the impact that our medical advancements have on the individuals whose bodies are used to make them possible. Please click the subscribe button and head down to the description below to listen to this book for free on Audible. See you in the next summary.